Okay, let's start seeing some responses. Okay, I guess as people type, I can start. But again, thank you so much and a very warm welcome to this session. Thanks for putting that in, Akanksha. We're so grateful that you're here. Thanks, Rupal. Thank you, everyone else. A little bit about what we are doing here and what we are hoping to gain from this session today. Uh, at the circle, we do a lot of forums and light touch conversations around what does it mean to really reinvent education and create a more equitable future for children, especially children from low income communities. How can we empower them by really imagining and thinking about the future of schools? So at the circle, we have an incubation that empowers entrepreneurs to start their own learning spaces. With the Circle Labs, we create spaces for conversations like these, but we also have more cohort based in depth programs for people who want to take the next step in thinking a lot more deeply about reinvention, about conducting pilots for children in the communities. We have grants that we are able to give out for projects. So if you're interested in any of this, feel free to get in touch with me or anyone else from the Circle team, and we'll be able to talk more. This conversation that we are having is also in collaboration with the Schools of Tomorrow Summit, which is a very interesting event that's happening in the first week of August in Pune that's bringing together school leaders, aspiring school leaders, and innovators to come together and have a conversation. It's being organized by different initiatives throughout the country. I teach Aakanksha Foundation, the Circle, Teach for India, and Teach for All Network. So some of you who are joining us are, of course, joining the summit and coming in from that area, but we're very excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. A little bit about the session today and Project Fuel, which is the organization that Aakanksha is joining us from. Project Fuel is dedicated to transforming life lessons from everyday people into impactful educational and artistic projects. They have a unique wisdom based methodology, which is what we are going to hear about today at length, and also do activities and a lot more interaction on what it really is, what it looks like in play, and we get to ask Akanksha more questions as well. So stay tuned if you want to hear a lot more about wisdom based methodology. Project Fuel also explores human experiences and social issues through films and documentaries, among other things that they do. Akanksha, who's here from Project Fuel, is a learning architect at the organization, which is, by the way, a very cool job title. She designs and leads initiatives that infuses playfulness and joy into education, drawing from human wisdom. A very simple structure for today's session is the next 10-15 minutes, we'll hear about Project Fuel's work. What does it look like on the ground? They work in very interesting geographies, even outside of India. So we'll hear from what their work really looks like, what their work looks like across age groups. And we'll also be able to do activities and some interactions around their methodology. And then we open up for questions and any queries we have about the method, the organization, anything that everyone in the audience wants to ask. Over to you, Akanksha.
Thank you so much, Amina. Hello, everyone. Wow, we have 81 of us on this call, which is amazing for a Wednesday evening. I would love and invite everyone to switch on their videos if it is possible. Would love to put the faces on these little rectangles in front of me. So that would be great. And I understand if you cannot, so that's fine as well. Without any further ado, I'm going to pull out some of my slides and take you through the work that we have been doing at Project Fuel, and then get into some of the nuances of the methodology. So you're seeing a bunch of faces, right, on the first screen. What does a Syrian refugee, a Maasai woman, a grandmother from Uttarakhand, a techie from Bangalore, and a child from rural Tanzania have in common? We often wonder that. And for us, the answer is wisdom. We believe that each one of them has wisdom, and each one of them is adept in using that wisdom to navigate through the complexities of everyday life. And this belief of ours was almost seeded in the personal story of our founder, Deepak, whose mother was pulled out of school when she was in grade 5. And Deepak went up to her one day and he's like, "Hey, are you lying to me that you didn't go to school? Because how are you raising me and my siblings so well? How are you managing the finances of the house? These are all the things that I'm learning in school. And if you didn't go to school, where are you learning it from?" And her simple yet profound response to that was, "I am learning from life, and the world is my classroom." And with that, if she was learning from life, and we all can learn from life, and if we are more than 8 billion of us on this planet today, that means we have more than 8 billion life lessons to learn and grow from. And that's what we do at Project Fuel. We document and celebrate the practical wisdom of everyday people around us. And we pass that on through the creative interventions of education, arts and culture, and films. In education, that looks like translating some of the intangibles into tangible to cultivate life skills across age groups. In arts and culture, it could look like using art almost as a currency for social impact to document the cultural wisdom that exists all across the globe. And in films, it could look like making documentaries, short films, putting up videos on YouTube to really understand the diversity that we have around us. Wisdom for many, many years, almost centuries, sat in the domain of religion and philosophy, right? We almost believed that you had to either be Oprah Winfrey with a talk show, or like some sadhu baba or a sage dressed in saffron to be called as wise. But luckily for all of us, a lot is changing in the field of wisdom. And now we have neurobiologists, neuropsychologists, sociologists, all coming in the field. And they are actually telling us that wisdom is not a virtue, but it is actually a cognitive ability, and it is a skill that we all can learn. And we can learn this through creating experiences and spaces that bring out the awe and wonder in the learner. But what is this wisdom? Like I was saying, that there is a lot of research growing in this field, and the scientists overall have kind of defined wisdom to include these 6 major facets about working towards a common good, adopting multiple perspectives, reflecting, managing one's emotions. So these are like the 6 main so-called tenets of wisdom, so as to speak. And at Project Fuel, what we did is we borrowed some of these learnings and we reflected on our own experience working in this field from the past 15 years and devised our own wisdom-based methodology. And because we wanted to kind of bring in, we didn't want to whenever we say the word wisdom, I almost, people take a step back. I see the body language of people like crumbling under its pressure of the word, but we wanted to bring in the playfulness, the fun, the joy that can be associated with wisdom. And that's why, borrowing this symbology, we have used a pinwheel. And like a pinwheel, which is fluid, which is interconnected, which brings in joy, all of these 5 pillars that you can see on your screen stand alone in its own right, but are also very fluid and interconnected. And I'm going to be talking about each one of them in the subsequent slides, but I'll wait for few seconds just for you to really take these in and start thinking about what do these words mean to you for now. One benefit that I have observed of this methodology is that it really cuts across age, borders, and formats. They literally melt away. And these are just few examples of our project that I wanted to take you through. This methodology manifests itself in different ways, right? Um, it could look like working with public schools all the way in Pittsburgh in USA, where kids are trained to document the wisdom of their teachers. And the frames that you can see behind in this picture are actually life lessons that these second graders have documented and designed, that this is the way I want my teacher's life lesson to be displayed. In rural Tanzania, it looks very different. Uh, for us, the methodology was used by creating this space for the kids to express themselves better and not be drowned with the academic pressure that they had in their school systems. Or sometimes it looked like partnering with amazing organizations already doing some great work, like Menstrupedia, who is on a mission to raise menstrual awareness. And what we did is we used this methodology to design a curriculum to raise menstrual awareness anchored in the life lessons of men. Some days it looks like partnering with 100, which is based in Finland, and interviewing and documenting the life lessons and the wisdom of global education entrepreneurs, really learn from their lived experience and design an online module which shifts the focus from the innovation to the innovator so that they can take care of their own well-being and self-care. And some days it looks like going deeper into one of the pillars. I had the opportunity to design a 6-week program on perspective taking and sharing, and had some learners across different cities of India join in virtually. And for us to understand, what does a 10-year-old really think of the word perspective? Does she use it in her day-to-day vocabulary? How can she borrow perspective from her grandfather in an interview? And on some days, it looks like being knocked on the door by the municipal corporation, the education corporation in Belgium, who wants to design a democratic school system, where we worked with educators in Belgium to pass on our methodology so that they can inculcate it within their classrooms. So now let's see how this comes into action, right? Here you can see a young girl. They have been given these small mirrors and they have to spot 40 new things about their face in 4 minutes. So people are counting their eyelashes, their pimples, the gap between my eyebrows look like an airplane, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the session, one of the girls in her reflection said that, you know what? I think my smile suits me, contrary to what she had been told growing up and the narrative that she had been fed. And this activity was based on a woman's life lesson. And her life lesson was, if your face is surprising you or manages to surprise you every morning, then you're still having a good life. Right. So that was her life lesson, and that was the activity that came from it. Now, okay, let us all, how many people are we on the call right now? We are going to collectively actually do an activity together, because why not? So for this, I really invite all of you to participate, touch base with your inner child, and quickly tell me, you can either write in the chat or unmute yourself, which according to you is the odd one out. You can see 5 elements on my screen. Which is the odd one out? Amazing. I can see the fish. And now the fish is feeling really, really sad because we have just said that the fish is the odd one out. So the fish is almost crying and coming to me. And what we need to do is collectively, we need to convince the fish that it belongs to the group. And we are going to talk directly to the fish because the fish is pissed. So we are going to say, "Dear fish, dash, dash, dash." And we need to convince it. So go crazy. There's no right or wrong answer here. We just need to convince the fish. You can unmute yourself and share your responses, type in your answers.
Dear fish, you carry yourself around, so maybe you are one of us, or like you are one of us.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I can't see your name, but thank you for sharing. I can see some responses coming in the chat as well. Dear fish, you belong here just like any of them because all of you can move. Dear fish, you belong to the group because just like everyone else, you're colorful. Amazing. The fish is giving me half a smile right now, but is still not fully convinced. Thank you so much. Keep sharing your responses. I have done this activity multiple times, and sometimes we have a lot of time at our hands. So I keep asking the learners to give me like 20 responses to convince the fish. And by the end of it, I remember in one of the sessions, I think the kid might be like 12 or 13 years. And the kid goes, "Dear fish, you belong to the group because just like everyone else, you're on the same PowerPoint deck." Or, "Dear fish, you belong to the group because there is a movie based on each one of you." So towards this activity, what I wanted to bring to the discussion today is most of the time, especially when I was a kid and in school, we were taught the odd one out, right? Like we were given a set of elements and we were asked that which is the odd one out. And how do we kind of flip that question for our learners and ask them to really include people in, to talk about what does inclusion mean? What does belonging mean? And the fish here is just a metaphor for that, right? And what happens is in in the process of trying to get the fish to belong to the group, invariably what all of us were trying to do is really spend time in trying to find similarities. And sometimes when we are not able to find similarities, we start questioning the system. And don't we all want that even for the human race sometimes? To question, why is this happening? And this activity, again, um, is based on someone's life lesson, Renita's life lesson. And her life lesson is never settle for no as an answer. You can always ask why not? And this brings me to the first pillar of our methodology, where we speak about perspective taking and sharing. And we just engaged in that through this activity, right? We had to think through the perspective of the fish. How is the fish going to feel? And invariably, we do it with humans as well. One of the projects that I wanted to talk about today, which cuts across all the 5 pillars, honestly, but is embedded, I think, beautifully in perspective taking and sharing, is this project where we train students to document the life lessons and the wisdom of their teachers and community members. And the project started because as a team, whenever we visited schools or just being products of the school system, most of the corridors are laced with quotes of Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa. And although these quotes are very insightful, the kids don't have access to these people. They have access to us, teachers, educators. But unfortunately, in a lot of schools, even today, there exists a gap between the kids and the teachers. The kids only see the teachers as, hey, Aakanksha is my strict math teacher. They don't see Aakanksha as someone beyond that role. And through this project, we wanted to humanize that, and we wanted to make the relationship between a teacher and the student a bit stronger. The first two pictures are actually from an organization that I used to work previously in Bombay. It's called Jai Vakil Foundation, and they work with children with intellectual disabilities. And you can see a group of them. We actually did this project with them. We had to adapt it based on their needs and challenges, but through the project, we could document 75 life lessons of the organization to actually celebrate 75 years of the organization existing and working in this space. This project, we have been able to do it with public schools in Uttarakhand, in the mountain regions of India. We have been able to take this project even to Pittsburgh, and it's been almost a 3-year project there, working with more than 20 schools. So you can see this picture where elementary school kids are interviewing their teacher, making notes of that. But one beautiful thing that comes out of this project is the creativity that kids really get to play around with. So some kid in some school, we have this entire wisdom council, and they said that, hey, we don't want to print the pictures of our teachers and have their life lesson written against it. Why don't we actually do some doodling and make caricatures of the teachers? So in some schools, the wisdom corridor looks like this picture. In another elementary school, it was such a beautiful insight of a kid, because she said that, hey, all of us are this height. If I'm going to put the frames at this height, none of my peers are going to be able to read it. So they made the decisions to actually get the frames put at an eye level that the kids can see, and have a QR code for people who may not be visually be able to read the life lessons. The wisdom corridor takes many shapes and forms. The inauguration of the corridor almost serves as a beginning to really include and imbibe the wisdom-based philosophy in different aspects. Just last month, we had a celebratory event in Pittsburgh where all the school communities came together to celebrate the project that we have been able to do in the past 3 years. And again, like I was saying, that we love to play with wisdom. It was almost this spin and doodle thing where there were multiple life lessons written, and people had to interpret what that life lesson means by drawing it. And this little kid here has taken it quite literally. The life lesson you may not be able to read, but it says that do not put the toaster in the bathtub. So that was someone's life lesson, and he has interpreted that. These life lessons do not need to be just restricted to within the classroom setting or to the school setting. It can go into the households, into family discussions. The lady here that you can see is an amazing, amazing librarian. Her name is Bridget. She works in an elementary school in Pittsburgh, and she led the project for us in her school. But day before yesterday, she texted me saying that, hey, our summer break is going on, and do you know what the summer project for my kids is going to be this summer? Is that we are going to interview and document the life lesson of all our family members and put up a wisdom corridor inside our house. So she's taking the project from the school setting into her family. The second pillar that we talk about is questioning along with answering. We live in a world that our questions create, but oftentimes, especially when I was growing up, the focus in school was always about what is the correct answer or how do I give the best version of my answer. There were little to no spaces to really tap into the curiosity of us learners and make space for them to question their reality, to question their inner self, to question what they are observing on a day-to-day basis. And that's what we do with this pillar. 2 years back, I found myself in a very, very remote, small village called Babati in rural Tanzania. I recently saw a meme on Instagram. I am that tiny educator that gets lost in a group of students. So that's me right there getting lost with all these kids. And due to the context, there is a lot of pressure on these kids in Babati to academically perform well. Classrooms often are not a safe space for them to really express themselves. There is, again, little or no space to say the wrong answer. So because of that, they are very inhibited to express themselves. But soon we realize that these kids love going outside and being in the fields because that's where they feel like, okay, fine, this is me. They feel more free and they like to share. And that's exactly what we did. We took them outside in the fields and did some activities. And one of the activities that we do is we actually ask the students, think about what's that one question you would like to ask God or anyone if you don't believe in God, just this supernatural being. And I'm just going to leave this slide for a couple of seconds for us to see what each of these questions are actually telling us about what is going on in these kids' mind. Makrina, who is 13, would like to ask that why did you create us in different colors? She wants to talk about the racial disparity. Why can't we all, and look at this, the 13-year-old is asking, why can we all be sinners but can't be our own saviors? Why must all sinners go to hell? And some people just want to ask God that, hey, God, are you always working? Or do you take some time off to rest as well? And within these questions are insights that are woven about our learners. And if we create space, that is the magic that we get to understand as educators. The next one that I'm going to is establishing relationship. Oftentimes, within the education space, at least back in the day, now things are really changing, but things were in silos. Right? We had our math period, it's only for math. English is only for English, and it was almost labeled. But we don't live like this. The world is interconnected, and there are so many interconnections between each of this. And through establishing relationship, that's what we are advocating for, is that can we create spaces within classrooms, outside classrooms, where when we are discussing about algebra, can we actually understand what is the epistemology of algebra? Why did it come to being? When we are writing a poem, we are actually measuring in meters, but we never talk about poetry in our math class. How do we bring these seemingly disparate themes together? That's what we do in establishing relationship. And a project of ours that comes to my mind when I talk about establishing relationship is the Wise Wall project. Um, this is a project that we designed when we started working with rural communities, with more marginalized communities where literacy levels could be a challenge for us. So there we realized that art can be that almost the currency to talk about these topics like migration, water issues, and the social issues that the communities are dealing with. And within that, make connections between all of these themes and social issues. So it's not only a beautiful mural to look at or click picture against, but it becomes that entryway almost to have conversations, have deeper conversations, get our learners to ask about what are the issues that the community is facing? What is our role that we can play in solving this issue? Two examples that I would like to share quickly is we were able to do this project in rural Uttarakhand in a village called Saur, Saur. Saur was titled as the ghost village. Why was it titled as the ghost village? Because there were 200 families, and now there are only 12 families that live there due to migration. And we wanted to do something about it because there lies such rich culture in that community. So we went there and we documented the life lessons and the cultural nuances of each of those families, even the ones that have migrated. And now the village looks like an open art gallery of learnings, which has brought in that social visibility with some of the tourists maybe coming in for the people who live in the village themselves are taking pride in the village now because they see the value of their wisdom that already existed within themselves. The project looked different yet similar in the context of Tanzania, where we worked with the Maasai tribe. Uh, the Maasai is one of the oldest tribes, and even today, women have to walk almost 9 hours collectively in their day to collect water. And that was the social issue that we were trying to grapple with. We again collected the life lessons and the human wisdom that exists. We created a community center and painted murals to share the story of the community. And because of the project, we were able to set up a water harvesting unit and raise funds to create that. And now the community that we worked with, the women's time has drastically reduced from 9 hours to 4 hours to collect water every day. The next one that I want to talk about is encouraging reflection. Most of us do this on a day-to-day basis, and I think it's one of the simpler ones to understand, but yet so powerful, not only for the learners, but even as a teacher or as an educator, because through these reflection practices, we really get to know about ourselves a little better and examine our own needs and capabilities. One example that I wanted to share under this pillar is while I was working with some of the learners in India, and we formed Project Fuel, found this small thing that we call as the Young and Wise Council, because we love to learn from the wisdom of these kids. We asked them that, what is one burning question that you want to reflect on and unpack? And all of them said that, you know what, we want to really understand what a good friendship is. Because they were at that age, these were girls aged between 11 to 13. And they, when they borrowed perspective from their grandmother, they borrowed perspective from their other friends in the classroom, they did a little bit of research on their own. And then we encourage them to almost visualize these as metaphors and create a manifesto on what a good friendship is. And here are some of their responses. Bhavni, this 13-year-old, said, a good friendship is like a stack of perfect fluffy pancakes. Another one, living in south of India, borrowing from her context, she's like, a good friendship is peaceful, it's comforting, it's calm like a coconut oasis. Another way where we encourage reflection is just asking these simple yet profound questions to kids, right? Saying, what is love? And every time we have asked this question, it just leaves me speechless. Just the ability of kids to be able to articulate their thoughts so beautifully. Deborah saying that love is all about giving hope to others consistently, or saying love is the lens through which one can feel seen. And again, these are some of the ways in which we can further get an insight into how are our kids really understanding the world around them and what are some of the things that they are valuing in their own lives. The last pillar that I wanted to share about is narrative play. Narrative play is all about storytelling, really using narratives as that anchor or as the tool to help us organize our thoughts, pack it in certain ways, and understand what is going on in the world around us. One of the projects that I think really speaks true of narrative play is the World Wisdom Map that we created during the pandemic in the year 2020. The entire narrative at that time was of grief and loss. And at Project Fuel, we were questioning that. We were like, how do we shift this narrative and bring in more hope in the world? Because that's what we need right now. So we went on a mission to document life lessons from each of the 195 countries in the world. And it's available on the World Wisdom Map right now for all of us to see, really immerse and sit with these life lessons and ask ourselves that, how do I interpret this life lesson? What does this mean in my context? And once we had all of these life lessons documented, is when we again played with that information and the wisdom. We brought in artists to have their own artistic interpretations, like you can see on the bottom right. We gave some life lessons to children to have their own interpretations. We collaborated with mental health professionals and artists to create these mini care packages that people could share with their friends and families who were coping with either loss, burnout in their life. And we also have an open source educational module designed based on the life lessons that we were able to collect through the project. Over the years, one of my favorite things has been just marveling the life lessons of children, even as young as 6 and 7. And that is what I just wanted to kind of end my presentation with, is some of these life lessons of children. Nisha says, when you are done using the jar, remember to close the lid. Aaron in Chile says, learn to search like moms do. They don't give up. They are professional seekers. Abdul Rahman 6 years from Belgium says, before learning how to ride the bicycle, know where the brakes are. And again, in the simple yet profound life lesson lies metaphors, lies understanding and meaning making of these kids that we as adults can also borrow. And if there is one thing that I would like to leave all of you with after today's session is really all of us to start honoring and celebrating the wisdom of our children. Because oftentimes a wise child is looked as an oxymoron, right? Because we have been fed in this narrative that you need to have gray hair to be called wise. But reading these life lessons, working with kids every day reminds me that that is not true. And wisdom lies in the experience, and age is only a proxy. These are some other life lessons. One of them, very, very practical as well. Kids are practical, playful, deep, a combination of all of them. Never keep the ice cream in your room and forget about it. It grows fungus. Come on, guys. This life lesson we all need. The other one is reminding us that come out of your shell. There are good things outside as well. Surbi, who is only 10 years, has illustrated her life lesson, and her life lesson is when you're sad, walk towards light and be happy. So yeah, this was a quick run through all of some of the work that we have been doing, and I wanted to leave all of you with a gift that you can scan, and if you are unable to scan, I will ask Amina and the Circle team to share the link with you in the feedback form as well. So don't worry. But thank you so much for patiently listening to me and engaging in the activity. I know it was a lot of information thrown at all of you, but we can take a deep breath together, shake it off, and I'm open to taking any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for that, Aakanksha. I'm just pasting the link of the QR code in the chat in just a few seconds, but feel free to come off of mute and ask Aakanksha any questions. If you're more comfortable putting that in chat, we're able to take that up as well. Just putting the link here. A big link, but
I think I absolutely loved I just loved everything you spoke of. Um, I really am very, very curious and I want to know about um so what is love is something I'm taking away. I'm gonna do it. The fish activity I'm taking away. I want to know more about what are different ways in which you capture wisdom, like talking to elders or just talking to teachers. I love that. I'm getting so many different ideas. Share more, no?
Thanks, Kankana. Is that how you pronounce
Yes,
your name?
yes, yes.
So Kankana, thank you so much. Firstly, I would encourage you to go to the World Wisdom Map. There is that educational module that I think you will really benefit from because there are more activities that you can take back into your classroom, into the school setup. I think as a starting point, Kankana, what we do is just open up the dialogue about wisdom, right? Like ask people, would you like to be beautiful or intelligent? Would you like to be intelligent or smart? Would you like to be smart or wise? Just take them through that journey and inquire about what are different people's understanding first of the word wisdom and what is it to mean wise. Because I think for me, that has always served me well. Whenever we enter classrooms, we always ask the learners that what are some of the qualities that you think a wise person has? And I won't even say that it surprises me, because kids don't surprise me anymore, but like they will come up with things like, a wise person will not just think about themselves, they'll think about everyone else. And that is pro-social behavior that scientists have given a term to, but kids already know that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Just, I think, bring in dialogue and ease them through some of these. And I honestly, the simplest way is just, again, to be curious about the person and their life. I would say don't lead with, "Hey, Amina, how are you? Tell me, what's your life lesson? How did you learn it?" That should almost be the last thing you ask, and just ease a person into that.
Hi, Adil, go ahead.
So, hello, Kasha. Like, I really loved the way you took us to the journey. And from the time when Deepak gave his first TEDx Gateway talk, I'm following his work. I was with it in the project of 50 toughest question as well. So, I understand the work quite well. So, recently, like, had an opportunity to be part of the one another camp. And then there was this talk of ancient wisdom. There are like many small villages, the one in like North India which you recently talk about. So there are some ancient villages, but the thing is that we need this task to get on and share that ancient wisdom from the people to the kids in the school. So how would we do that on a scale? Like if it is we have to do it for one village, then we can take an initiative and do it. But if we want to do it on a scale, then what do you think how we can do that?
Thanks for asking, Adil. And I wish I had the answer to that question, but I don't. And that is something we are on that collective mission. Uh, but I think, again, what you said, right? It can start from that one village, instead of taking. And I think over the years, our definitions of scale are also changing. Is scale only 100 villages? Or is scale more in depth, right? That we all keep talking about as educators as well, or in social impact. So I would encourage you to start with that one village, open up conversations, even if there are 10 grandparents that you can interview
Mm.
and bring their wisdom into the classroom. That's a start. Uh, so, yeah, that would be my response to that question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Adil, and bringing in that perspective as well. I think we had a question from we starting from Rupal, who's mentioning, at the risk of asking you to be repetitive, what are some key critical shifts that you have observed in children through these exercises? So, if there are examples that you can share of any transformations, or just not just that, but I think also just talking about what kind of impact this has on students that seems significant.
Yeah. Thanks, Rupal. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is just it provides that safe space for expression, and that expression manifests itself in different way. So I'll give you an example of a learner in Pittsburgh. We completed the project. It was the usual PTM there as well. And the parent came to the teacher and said that, you know what, I'm changing the learner's name, but Tim never talks about anything that happens in school. And as a parent, you always want to know what's happening in school. And the parent is like, I used to ask him multiple questions, would never talk about it. But Wisdom Corridor was the first project that he would excitedly come and share about. And I think why that sharing was happening is because for the first time, Tim actually got to exhibit his agency, could figure that, hey, I can express myself freely in classroom, make decisions about as small or big to, hey, where do I want the frame to be drilled in my school corridor, and walks through that corridor with pride. And I think he brings that pride from that school to home. So yeah, I think it's more about the expression. Bhavni and Surbi are these young girls that I've been working with over a year now. And I was asking them actually the other day that what makes you show up on these calls consistently, right? And they said that I can speak freely. You are asking me about advice for adults. So almost putting them at that same thing, right? Like for us at Project Fuel, we never treat kids as like these empty buckets to be filled with information, or they are the beneficiaries of the program, but really treating them as collaborators of the project and be like, hey, what can I learn from you? So I think if you just walk in with that understanding, I think sometimes that helps, Rupal. I hope that answers your question. Smita?
Hi, Aakanksha. No question, but I have one sharing that I would like to share is through all the slides, what I realized that it's really, really important to acknowledge even the simpler and small life lessons because that will give the boost to student to share their ideas very freely inside the classroom. Uh, so yeah, like really, and as an educator, we always try to find rigor in everything. I think sometimes we have to be okay with small and simple stuff and give that appreciation to students so that they are coming up with the big things in life in future. Yeah.
Thank you, Smita. You couldn't have summarized my essence in a better way. And I think that is an important reminder, I think, because as educators as well, we get so bogged down with the pressure that I think these serve as reminders that there is wisdom in every small thing. It's even in observing that little flower that is blooming, and then maybe reflecting about it that, hey, what did that bring in? Or is there any cultural wisdom attached to that flower? So it's in those small things, but really sitting with those observations. Yes, Gomanti, ma'am.
Um, just that wisdom can come from different perspectives. But what happens when you have some kind of myths handed down or superstitions handed down in the name of wisdom? Then how do we separate and how do we manage that?
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And I don't think there is a simple answer, but what is coming to me right now is that are we at least creating space to have those conversations? Oftentimes, it's very black and white that has been passed down, right? Or we live in those echo chambers ki, Are ye kisne bataya? I don't agree with that. So I'm not even going to hear their perspective. So I feel it is recently, personally, I'm trying to explore the difference almost between opinion and perspectives, right? Because I think opinions almost become rigid, but perspectives create that space. So even with these myths, unpacking them, and for example, if I'm telling you something and you think it's a myth, can we have a conversation, right? Can you ask me that why do you think it's right? Again, I'm reminded of Renita's life lesson to ask why not. Is that a myth? Is that a reality? So yeah, I think it would be more around conversations. And then, of course, there is research and you back it up with some scientific evidence if that is there, because in the end, we want to do good. We don't want to do harm. So if some information is leading to harm, we back it up with scientific knowledge that exists.
Thanks for that question, Gomati. And I actually want to bring in an additional question that Aakanksha has written about is while conducting an activity that centers around asking life lessons, how would one deal with topics and conversations that might be considered sensitive? Um, and I want to contextualize for this for children if there are heavy topics or topics that sometimes might feel off limits but that have come up. How have you been able to deal with that or turn them into fulfilling experiences?
Thank you again. An important question, and it may seem like I am dodging the question, but honestly, in the work that we have done, children don't put it as a sensitive topic. It's educators that label them as sensitive topics. So, in most of our conversations, we have just gone ahead and spoken about like racial disparity, for example, in Babati, but we did it by bringing in play. Right. So, I think the way to do it is perhaps just reminding ourselves that yes, these are tough conversations, they are sensitive conversations. But again, how can I bring in play and can I have that platform where there is wisdom and where there is play so that it doesn't seem overwhelming for both the teacher and the child who is expressing themselves? And then, of course, there is always like a TNC kind of thing here. There will be some topics, there will be some discussions that even I may not be able to control or like facilitate, and then you seek help within those conversations. So, yeah.
No, thanks for that, Akanksha. And what I'm hearing is you still explore, right? You don't try to steer it into a particular direction or outcome. You are exploring and exploring through play and almost in a way, hopefully letting the child take the lead in where it goes ahead.
Yeah, and sorry if I can just actually add to this point. I mean, I think you have gone on mute. I think the methodology is again a really good way to navigate these tough topics, right? So even if you're talking about bullying, for example, can I make space for questioning about bullying? Can I have kids go and borrow perspectives from their grandparents or their parents and ask them about what was bullying or how did it look like? So oftentimes the methodology or the pillar becomes that soft landing pad, if I may, to navigate these conversations. Yes.
It's a Aakanksha again, but the spelling is a bit different. So
Oh, wow. That was easy. I was like, wait, I don't want to mispronounce that, but I know how to pronounce Akansha. So go ahead.
So just that we were discussing about how like it's we as educator have labeled them as sensitive topics, but then in areas like I'm currently working with an area in Assam where the exposure of the student is very less, and for them identifying the social issue, like you were while we were talking about Wise Wall project where they can talk about social issues. I feel that they fail to recognize things happening in the society as social issues. In those cases, what can we do?
Good question. I am thinking about this. Can you give me some more, like my immediate reaction to that, honestly, would be to kind of just, again, ease them into observation and like ask them more about what is going on in their home, what they're observing in their school and outside, and talking about, do you think this is, again, like probably bringing in like some play in this? I'm just literally thinking on top of my mind, right? Like if you are the, very typically we all do this also often, but like if you were the governor of Assam, or if you were, put them into power positions, kids love that. Like if you had to give advice to people walking on the road, what would you tell them? And through these insights, will you understand that, oh, they're actually not liking people polluting something, or they are, you know, I don't know if I'm articulating myself well here, but it's almost about guiding them through their observations and how would they like to change some things, and then almost circling it back that, okay, fine, these are some of the things that collectively we are grappling with, and it is like a larger issue at hand.
Thank you. Thank you. It does give me a little idea about how can we have this conversation to make them aware even about things they might not be aware. So I think taking up the initiative at least to make them aware is something we can do. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Akanksha. I think that's very helpful. And I'm even wondering if you have such a real-time problem at hand, which seems like children need to be involved with and be exposed to, or I mean, just understand what their ecosystem looks like right now. If there is a way to actually talk to Project Fuel about what you can do in your community, we will make space for that. I did want to ask Akanksha how people can stay in touch with you outside of these sessions. A lot of us on this call work with children or work in communities, and would love to kind of see if people like Akanksha could get more insights from you around projects that they want to do on the ground as well.
Yes, thank you, Amina. And we are always very happy whenever any partner, any educator reaches out. We would love to help in any way because this is a collective mission. We can't do it by ourselves. So do reach out. There are various ways in which we can, partner, collaborate, just learn and unlearn from each other as well. I am putting my email address in the chat here. You can directly email me as well. And if you have specific projects that you would like to explore or bring within your schools and classrooms, you can maybe mention that in the email as well. I have already requested Amina to share a couple of links. The Wisdom Corridor is a great entryway into the school system. So maybe that's a project that you would like to explore. Like I was saying previously, the other way is to check out the educational module, which is on the World Wisdom Map. That will give you a better insight into some of the activity designing, how some of the pillars that you just heard about come into play. So yeah, these are some of the things we do work across levels is the word coming to my mind, but maybe that's not the right word, but with children, with educators, with school leaders, or even if you're not in each of these roles, just reach out and we can figure a way out.
Thank you, Akanksha and Akanksha. I'm just looking at the chat to make sure if we want to take up any more questions in the next 3-4 minutes before wrapping up. But would love for you all to take a second to look in the chat. I've put down some links for Project Wisdom. Adil has very gracefully put in his LinkedIn profile as well if you want to talk about education policy with him. And also, there is a feedback form which we'll post again. So, if this is all too much, just look at the chat a little bit and we'll make sure we are reiterating all of these links. Tanishta is saying she has something coming up this weekend if that is too short a notice to collab. I don't know. I think that's up to Akanksha, but I love the urgency, and I'm sure you can write to her to see what can happen. But thank you so much for putting that, Tanishta. Just see, I feel like there were a few questions that I'm just scrolling back to make sure. Navedita had a really good nudge, a very in-depth nudge about how do you even differentiate between opinion, beliefs, views, knowledge, and wisdom. So I feel like I think there is something to be said about how do you internally, how are you aligned on what is defined as wisdom, right? Like what it really, so I think this question is a great nudge to think about just as an organization, as people who are practitioners and working with communities and children, how are you really aligned on that definition?
Yeah, and I I think this is something which is going to be a long lasting exploration almost. But I think as Project Fuel, as a team, if I had to answer it, we look at wisdom as experience, right? Like if you have experienced something, we define that as wisdom. And that's why it cuts across. So it's that's wherein I kind of make that distinction between like knowledge and wisdom, because knowledge could be something that I can Google, but wisdom is something that I may have experienced it or seen someone go through or experience it. So I think the key word in my head, at least, is that lived experience where I differentiate wisdom from knowledge and opinion. But yeah, this is something that keeps us up at night on many days, and something that we all are collectively exploring. But thankfully, the work does not seem that isolating right now, with many educators, with scientists, with researchers coming in and trying to unpack it.
Thank you for that. I think that's a great note to just close the call. I know there might be a few questions and insights there that got left out, but let's hold on to those. Probably reach out to Akanksha for clarifying anything, even collaborations. I can already see people really want to work with Project Fuel. So I love that everyone's so excited. Thank you for that. I've put in some links again for everything that you can find more information for Project Fuel on, how to reach Akanksha. Suhani will put in a feedback link form as well on the chat again. I would love for you all to just take 5 minutes to fill that in before you log off. And just to close it out, thank you so much, Akanksha, for doing this. I think this has been such an insightful and creative nudge to think about how can we value each other's experiences, no matter how, no, without even thinking about quantifying it. And I think that's a beautiful way to think about the equality and dignity that we can all share with each other, especially in learning spaces and especially with children. So thank you so much for this. I am truly grateful for you coming up and doing this for our audience, and there will be many more conversations like this hopefully in the future, so looking forward to that. Thank you everyone else for being such an engaged audience. I always love it when people just come off of mute and ask questions and I don't have to nudge them. It makes my job easier. So thank you again for doing that. Please fill in the feedback form. Just scroll up. That would be very helpful, and have a great rest of the evening. Thank you so much for doing this. And we'll see you all soon on another forum. Bye-bye.
Am I audible?